Hey, my name is Margaret Wong, and today, one more time, I'm here again, and this is a very, very special half an hour. I hope for you too, but for me, it's really special. And today, I got my sister, who had refused me all these times, to speak with us. My sister, Rose Wong. Hey, Rose, how are you?
Hello, hello, hello. No,
Yes.
you can never refuse Margaret.
Oh,
It's not that. Okay. What are we going to talk about today?
okay, so this is awesome because I'm born in 1950 in Hong Kong and Rose is born in 1953 in Hong Kong. We have the same parents, and Rose came to America 2 years after I did. Cecilia and I, my second sister came, and then Rose came, and then George came. We are very, very tight. Through the years, we live in the same city, Cleveland, Ohio. Between us, we have 9 kids. So, Rose, tell us who you are, and then introduce yourself to me, and tell me what do you do.
I love that question. I remember when I was 17, I went for an interview and they said, "Tell me who you are." And I had no idea what that meant. So I said, "My name is Rose Wong."
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
so who am I? Right now, I run the Pro Asian Kitchen in Shaker Heights. We are right across the street from the Van Aken district. For those of you who is not in Cleveland, this is a brand new development that has been in the works for 10 years in Shaker Heights, and it's one of the best development ever to happen in Shaker. We built this restaurant in 1977. And so by now, 42 years, I think. And we have been doing pretty much the same thing. But the menu changes, the people sometimes change. I have employees that are with me 30, 35 years, and they're still here. We're all growing old together.
Ah,
So this is more a social place than a restaurant. This is a neighborhood place, and when you come in, if you come in here, you'll see most nights people know each other. They talk to each other. Servers know customers by name. It's one of the really wonderful place to be.
and Rose, explain to me the pictures behind you and beside you, and tell me before you started running restaurants, what do you do?
Oh, oh yeah, I didn't realize I'm sitting in this room. It was so noisy out there. The kitchen was pounding stuff. These are pictures that was part of my master's MFA thesis. They are. This was done 45 years ago, 44 years ago. Actually, 45 years ago, and I call it xerography. At the time, no one actually was doing any artwork on Xerox machine. And so I happened to be in the Xerox room in my job in the dental office, and I was a graphic artist. And I happened to put my hand on a Xerox machine, and the cover closed, and it took a picture of my hand. So I thought it was really interesting. So I did a series of movement on a Xerox machine, and so that became my master's thesis. It was interesting, very interesting.
And our listeners need to realize that's 45, 44 years ago. In those days, we don't call them Xerox, but Xerox just started, so we call them copy machines. And in those days, I don't even think IBM did Xerox machines. So this was very, very creative. And Rose, tell us about your childhood, where you're born, and what gives you your creativity, and how do you switch that artistic ideals into running a business?
Childhood. Well, we're born in Hong Kong, and it's one of the most exciting and horrifying place in the world. I mean, it is. I ever since I was little, before I came to the States, I always imagined a place where there is no noise. In Hong Kong, it's like in New York City in an apartment building in the middle of the city. it's noise everywhere. There really is no place where you don't hear something, anything, the traffic, people, fighting. So we actually grew up pretty poor, actually quite poor. But then our parents put education as a priority. So we all went to private schools, believe it or not. If you're poor, how do you afford that? Well, if you have parents like ours, they they find ways. I mean, they go through the Catholic diocese. They find ways to get us into these Catholic schools. And so our education in Hong Kong was pretty top notch, except maybe me, because I was not a very good student. So I was very rebellious. And the teachers in Hong Kong, they treasure obedience above all else. And I am actually not one of those, like Margaret. Margaret is one of the best students. Teachers love her. Right, Margaret?
We'll see.
So it was the education in Hong Kong was we got the best of the best.
And we have to remember those were in the 50s and 60s. In the Far East, if you are born Catholic versus in America, Catholicism, because of the Irish and the Italians, you were like very low. The Protestants are high. The Mayflower people, they're all Protestants. In Hong Kong, the Catholics are very high, the Christian is very low. Of course, we're all Buddhists. So Buddhist is a way of life. It's not really very much a religion as the American media treated it. So Rose, me, Cecilia, George, we all went to Catholic, like top-notch Catholic schools. Even today, if you come from Hong Kong, and a lot of times we go to Chinese parties, like in Boston, in New York, we'll see people, then they'll say, I'm from Hong Kong. They'll speak to you in English. I'm like, I'm from Hong Kong too. So Hong Kong is a weird place because class means a lot, money means a lot. So they always ask, what school did you go to? We're so proud. Rose, you have to tell our listeners where you went. And I went to St. Paul's Convent, which I think is better than Rose's school, but Rose thinks her school is better than my school. So we always compete on schools.
I went to St. Francis of Assisi, St. Francis, and it is it's a Catholic school. And then after that, I followed my younger brother to Rosary Hill School, and that was because the headmaster of that school, my brother was an altar boy, and so the headmaster of the school, Father Xavier, was a friend. Actually, I mean, really took to my brother and mentored him. So my brother got me into that school. That was a, what do you call it? How do you say that?
School for the rich.
Yeah, it is really a school for the rich. And I don't know how we did it, but I did fit in. People there were really nice to me. I think it's because of my brother.
Yes.
It was a nice place. And then I excelled because people were nice, and troubled children, I find, like me, if you give them a little kindness and they respond, and I did, and I ran for student council, and then so it was a very, very different experience from the other high school that I was from.
Right, because a lot of nuns, Catholic nuns, all of us who brought up Catholic, but on the other hand, looking back, they mean well, because they'll like beat us up or they'll slap us, but that's how the old days were. And our parents my mother would beat us up, me and Rose, and Rose, we have to talk about the favorite. You are so, oh my gosh, we have so much fun. But on the other hand, though, the Catholic schools really taught us character, morality, and my school was an all-girls school. Till today, I believe in same-sex education, because the nuns teach us. They don't teach us how to type. And that's another thing. I never learned typing my whole life. So I type slow. But they don't want us to be secretaries. They want us to become who we really could be. And also they don't teach us like home economics in those 50 years ago, 60 years ago. They don't teach us home economics, which most kids, girls in those days learn. They don't teach us sewing. So we became really, and even my husband told me you have a P complex. Anytime I compete against a woman, I always felt, oh my gosh, I better do well, because my opposing counsel is a woman. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're totally prepared. If it's a man, I'm like, I'll wing through it. So Rose, tell us your experience when you first came to America. What's your first thought when you land in this beautiful country? And what shaped you to who you are?
The very first memory when I got off the plane, it was the fall, and I remember I talk about noise. There was no noise when we got to Iowa. Okay, we went to Iowa, Ottumwa, Iowa. I think population was like 10,000 people or something. It's a very, very small town. It's a beautiful town. And the Ottumwa Heights College, the junior college that we came to study in, the nun, well, we're with nuns again, but then I became friends with these nuns. And actually, Margaret, you remember, I applied to be a nun twice, except I wasn't, I was just a student. I was a foreign student, so I couldn't get into the convent, but I used to go to conventions with them, and I learned from these nuns how to live an interesting life. Their life is very, very interesting. These are nuns. One of them was a congresswoman, and the other one was a dance teacher, and the one of them was a humanities teacher. And they all live in the same apartment that I went to every day to just be with them and study and do my homework. And so, actually, I think they shaped me more than anyone else in this country in the beginning. And I think that was a God. They were a godsend.
Right. And even now, we continue to donate to them. But in those days, we had no money. So we all came on a full scholarship. That's why we owe our church a big favor. And it's really nice. Even when the nuns were really getting up in age, because we are getting up in age, when they come to Cleveland, they would come visit us, and they're so proud we're doing so well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just awesome.
One of them, remember one of them when I was in Chicago, looking for a waitress job. During Margaret, you and I and my sister, as the other sister Cecilia and George, we never really went to our own graduation. Remember when you
Yes.
were given the honorary degree and you said in your speech, we never went to our graduation because after the last exam, we had to leave on the like a midnight train to go to Chicago to look for a job the next day and to look for a place to stay. It was not easy. We weren't old enough to be waitresses. I remember you told me you were 2 years older than me, so you've been there already. And I remember coming home and I was disappointed. I was crying. I couldn't get a job. And you said, "How come?" And I said, "Well, they asked me how old I was. I said 17, and they said no, you have to be 21." And you told me, "Oh my God, why don't you just tell them you're 21?" I got a job. We
Yeah.
used to walk to every single restaurant we walk into. Our English wasn't that great. It was quite an experience to pretend like you know what you're doing. I worked in an Italian restaurant as a waitress, and I said I've been a waitress before. And so I remember someone ordered eggplant, and I thought they were eggs, so I stood there and waited for eggs to come out. And there was no eggs coming out, and the customers got mad, and I got thrown out of the restaurant.
That's funny.
And,
Yes. Yeah.
and then the next day, I got a job in a diner, and someone ordered toast with no toasted bagel. And I gave them toast and bacon because I've never heard of the word bagel. I had no idea what a bagel was. And so, and our English was so bad, half the time I have no idea. So I imitate sounds. So if they ordered a Manhattan, I would go to the bar and say Manhattan. But if they order something with a Manhattan, in Chicago, they sound very different. And I would go to the bar and imitate, except the bartender had no idea what I was talking about. Remember Old Fitzgerald? I went to the bar and said, old fashioned jello.
That's funny.
And the
That's
bartender
awesome.
said, no, we don't have any old fashioned jello. And so I went back to the customer, and the customer kept repeating Old Fitzgerald, and I kept repeating old fashioned jello. So that kind of stuff really. So today, when I run this restaurant, I think it's very important to understand what are the strengths of your staff and what are their weaknesses, and you help them excel, and to make sure that they don't feel this small. And it was those were some very tough days, but then I learned so much just by we got by. We had to make enough money for the next semester, so there's no choice but to grin and bear it. You just have to grin and bear it. And at the time, we didn't know how to count American money. Remember? I mean, you get all these quarters. Honey, this is for you, and they give you a quarter in your hand, and you get all of these quarters. And at the end of the night, I had no idea how to count pennies and dimes, and so I gave up all my money to the cashier, and I said, "Can you change this for me?" And then she gave me back a $5 bill. And I said, "I made more money than this. I worked 9 hours." And she said, "That's all you have. That's all you gave me." So I learned the very important lesson. You trust someone, but you never trust them with money you haven't counted yourself.
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. Yes, yes, that's a good line. And tell me about your writing skills, Rose. You're always the best thinker, the best writer in our family. How did you develop that? What made you think so fast? And you're always my father's favorite, and for that I'm very, very
Oh,
envious.
you and I are both from a writing family. We are from a literary family. Dad was a publisher, and I think when something touches you inside, you I think being a good writer, you have to have a message. You have to write from the inside. You don't just write something. You have to express your inner thoughts. And if your inner thoughts is not important enough to you, you cannot be a good writer. So ever since I was little, in this very complicated world between, you know, the have and the have-nots, and we were the have-nots in a world of the haves, between our parents' world and the school that we were in. So it really it's a very difficult place to be. So I used to write poetry, and just to express myself. It's an expression. No one's going to read it. No one is going to. So that's how I started writing, is to write my feelings that was so strong that I had to let it out. And in Hong Kong at that time, you don't generally let out. Chinese, we don't talk about problems. We don't talk about, you just have to put up a good front. And so writing is one way to let out these, positive, negative, whatever they were. And I remember one year I read this magazine, and they had a contest for poetry. So I sent in my poetry, one of my poetry, and they published it. I was so proud, but it was a very sad poem. So I was so proud, and I was going to show it to my dad. And then he came home one day. He showed me a magazine with my poem in it, and he said, "Did you write this?" I said, "Yes." And I thought he would be proud. He wasn't. I think he thought that being a sad child, sorry, was not, it was not cool. So I never submitted another poem again. I learned. Okay, next question.
Okay. And thanks for that wonderful, wonderful answer. Rose and my family, and the four of us, is always the wisest, the most creative, and remind us and remind me, but tell the world about how you always take out stuff, put it back together. Even now, you're the fixer in our family. You fix everything. And you're so good at it. Like any time a glass broke, you can put it on. Explain all that to me. How do you do that? And the patience you have, hours and hours sitting there.
I think it's a matter of curiosity. I remember going to a friend's house and I saw an alarm clock and they said it didn't work. So I took it apart, but I couldn't put it together because I totally forgot to how I took it apart. And then I took it home, I put it all together, it worked. Had no idea how. So I think it's a matter of curiosity. It's when you see something broken and you can put it together whole and you can make it so that the seams are not visible. And that is a huge accomplishment to me. That is a huge accomplishment. So it is, you and I both have that tenacity that if I don't get this done, I will try like hell to get it done. Come hell or high water, I will do it. Right? You are the same way. And you are with your law practice, and I'm with my fixing broken pots. And but it's the same tenacity. You want to do a good job, and you want to make sure that it works. Same thing. It came from the same place.
So, how would you advise our listeners and our followers? How did you translate in the past 68 years your success from someone who's from the outside to the highest society in Shaker Heights in Cleveland? How do you do that? If you have a younger self, what would you do to advise yourself?
Just, I remember, that's the one thing that is very important. The saying you heard, fake it till you make it. You just have to keep going, just keep going, and just keep going. And one day you look back, you success is only success from a distance. You and I both don't feel success, especially you. I mean, look at your great big practice. You help thousands and thousands of people, but you never felt successful because it's more work ahead. It's more people that needed help. It's more, the world needs you. And the same with me. You don't even think of that word, and don't even think of the word failure because, with hard times, people used to say, remember Dad used to tell us, with hard times, you learn the lesson. There's always a lesson in there, and it'll give you a great way to look forward. And then when I went through hard times, I used to say, "Come on, just tell me already. What is the lesson you want me to learn?" I always look up there to our God, to God, and I say, just give me the lesson now. Why do I have to go through all of this to learn it? But the thing is, you have to learn it. You have to go through it, and you just have to grit your teeth and do it. And you fake it till you make it.
And do you think, and this is my last question, do you think in today's busy world with all the young people, they don't have to struggle like you and I? They're not hungry anymore. They always have their parents. I mean, even though the parents may not have it, but at least they have a home. So how do kids like this learn the hard way, like you and I, our family, the whole family did, all these immigrant families, these American born kids? What advice do you have for them?
It is not quite fair to say that their struggles are not as bad as ours. Struggle is a struggle. Whether, billionaires have their struggles, people that don't have any money on the street had struggles, and they're all the same. Hard times are hard times. And I remember talking to a billionaire friend of mine, and he used to tell me, the higher up you are, the harder you fall. And it hurts just as much falling. So it is, that was Uncle Gandaga. And I said, I have problems with 10 employees. I mean, you have 10,000 employees. How do you do it? And then he said, I do it with half my eyes closed because you cannot expect perfection. If you struggle, just keep on going. One day you'll get out of it. But then remember, there is another hole that you're going to fall into. You just have to get out of that hole, and then there will be another one. I mean, a struggle is a struggle. It doesn't matter where you are, who you are. So if you accept that as a fact, life goes on. There is no, I mean, God doesn't favor the rich, the poor, the have nots, the smart and the stupid. We're all the same. We all struggle the same way. We all complain the same way. And we all enjoy life the same way, but differently.
And with that, my beautiful sister Rose, who's my inspiration, and every year we are requirement. I do it. A lot of us do it. People from Hong Kong, we write down 3 people we want to imitate for the next year, for the next year. So you look back and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm even better than him or her, or whatever." And you are always my inspiration, my little sis.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you are mine too, definitely.
That's why we are very close.
But you have to remember, you are very successful, and you need to tell yourself that you are okay and life is good. Life is
Thank you.
okay.
Good. Thank you. Because she's right. I never think of that, Yeah, but thank you. I
It's
needed
time
that.
to start. You're old
That's
enough
right.
to learn that life is good.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thanks for listening to us. Thank you.